everyone. This is Deanna Minnick, and you're listening to the Detox Summit. Today, we have a very, very special guest. In fact, I would say that he is the celebrity of detox. He is next to Dr. Bland, who I would call the father of detox. I would say that Dr. Alejandro Junger is the superstar of detox, and he's taken detoxification to a whole new level. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to have met Dr. Junger some years ago and saw and heard about his own life story and what led him to his books, one of which is the best-selling book called Clean, which was released, I believe, back in 2012. And he's just launched a new book this year, actually last year, called Clean Gut, which is remarkable as well. So quite prolific, and I really enjoy Dr. Junger's story of how he had his own health conditions. And in addition to being a board certified in internal medicine and cardiology, what makes Dr. Junger very unique in my mind, especially for this summit where we're bridging together science and spirituality, is the fact that he also studied in India, and he did study the Ayurvedic tradition as well. So I'm hoping that he'll bring some elements of that into what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome to the Detox Summit, Dr. Junger.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction.
Again, it's such a great feeling to be here with you to listen to all of your wisdom, all of your nuggets of knowledge about detoxification. So what I'm hoping you'll start us with is really this intriguing story that you have, your own personal journey around health. And how did you get to Clean? How did you get to this whole platform of discovery around detox? Please tell us.
I was born in Uruguay in South America, and at the time I was born, there were no supermarkets like we have today. So all our food we bought at the local farmers market with my dad, and my mom prepared our food from scratch. So life was very healthy by default. When I went to medical school, I never really had a class on nutrition in a way that it translates to a healthy plate on your table. It was always, very scientific: proteins, carbohydrates, fats, fatty acids, vitamins, minerals, factors, cofactors, so calories, all these medical terms to describe something that we are actually doing every day, which is eating. So I didn't really know at that time the importance of this omission. But then when I graduated from medical school, I moved to New York to do my internship, residency in internal medicine, and my fellowship in cardiovascular diseases at Lenox Hill Hospital. And during those 6 years that it took me to complete my postgraduate training, the lifestyle change was so drastic from my lifestyle in Uruguay, especially the diet aspect of it, that I started getting sick without really knowing that it was the food. Of course, there were other factors, but the food mostly that was getting me sick. I started experiencing weight gain and allergies, and my digestion had turned into a nightmare. And gradually, year after year, I got worse until the point where I started waking up with this sense of dread. So I went to 3 specialists in one day, an allergist, a gastroenterologist, and a psychiatrist, so that I could cover all my symptoms. And that one day that I took off my training to go see my colleagues, my teachers, I ended up with 3 diagnoses and 7 prescription medications. By the end of the day, I got to my apartment, and looking at these prescription medications, I had the shock of my life. And it was twofold. On one hand, it was like, well, now I'm going to have to depend on all these chemicals in order to just function. The other shock was, this is exactly what I'm doing with my patients. I wonder how they feel when they get home with all the prescriptions I was giving them at that time. So the shock was too much for me to handle. I basically finished my training. I turned down all the offers for very lucrative jobs as a attending cardiologist, joining many prestigious cardiology groups, and I went to India to live in a monastery of sorts, in which I exchanged my work as a doctor for a way to learn how to meditate. Now, at that place, I was put in charge of the first aid station. You know, this ashram had a couple thousand people at any given time, and many of them were Indians, many of them were foreigners, and there was a first aid station that dealt with all of them, and also went around in the poor neighborhoods and treated people for free in a little bus turned hospital. So I learned there. I was exposed to all these different modalities, and in the end, just for practical reasons, we ended up working all together. We would sit, the Ayurvedic doctor, the Chinese medicine doctor, the chiropractor, myself, the hands-on healer, and everybody would listen to the patient, and then we would come up with a way of integrating all these things, the least aggressive, the least dangerous, or the approach with the least side effects, and we would tailor it for each patient. And this is, without even knowing the term, this was my first exposure to integrative medicine. So my symptoms of allergies, irritable bowel syndrome, and depression, which were my 3 diagnoses, started improving once I started meditating and applying certain tips or even instructions from the other practitioners that I was practicing with. And I did start improving by the vegetarian diet in the ashram, but it was turning back to the United States and starting to work in the system again. I moved to Palm Springs. I started working in a very busy cardiology practice with admission privileges in 4 hospitals. And again, eating in the cafeteria and you know, snacking and going to the supermarket and buying boxes of things with different colors and smells and jars and tubes, that I started getting sick again. And that was when something incredible happened for me. Basically, I explained it in the book. A friend of mine visited me after 10 days of me not seeing him, and his transformation was so profound that I was shocked. And I asked him, "What did you do?" He said, "Well, I went to a detox center close to where you live right now in Desert Hot Springs. It's called the We Care Spa, where they put me on a detox program consisting of juices, colonics, and other things like yoga and infrared sauna. And this is what happened. And my curiosity exploded. I got him in the car, took him, showed me the place. I found that the owner of this place was an Argentinian woman, which is close to where I come from in Uruguay. So we hit it off, and I explained to her my symptoms. She said, "Why don't you come over and do our program?" I couldn't stay there as a guest. I had to come in and out throughout the day in between my different offices where I was seeing patients and the hospitals. But doing this program, on day 10, I was completely free of all the symptoms that I had complained about before or suffered from before, completely. But beyond that, I was looking and feeling 10 to 15 years younger. So much so that people would ask me in the corridors in the hospital, my patients would ask me, my family and my friends would ask me. And everybody wanted to do what I did. So I started studying the concepts and practices of cleansing and detoxification. And everything was a little bit hokey pokey. There were, all this, and I say it with respect and love, all these tree hugging people that would come and give me their theories, and it sounded a little hippish, and then other nutritionists. Nobody really could explain to me scientifically what was going on until I discovered functional medicine. And it was then where every piece fell together, and I started realizing that detoxification is not only scientifically based, and I knew everything from medical school. I just hadn't put it together, and what a powerful tool for regaining and maintaining health.
So it seems that based on your background and all of the paths that you had followed, it's almost like you had this beautiful marriage of what you had been exposed to in India, and then having the experience yourself, and then having the inquisitive mind to understand the whys, the wherefores, and so really looking into functional medicine. So I think that you provide a perfect example of how we can take something that's very ancient and these cleansing practices and then put them to a scientific underpinning. Some people today, Dr. Junger, say that the whole practice and the art of detoxification is not scientific, that it is that we shouldn't even be doing these practices because the body can detoxify on its own. So all of this talk about detox is really nonsense. But what would you say to that based on your all of the paths that you've traveled and all of the studies that you've been immersed in?
Well, I have many things to say to such a scenario, such a person that says that. The first and most important one I say to myself is this: you cannot argue with success. And if I was suffering from problems that Western medicine, and I saw the top doctors in my system, so if I was diagnosed with things that needed 7 prescription medications, and that was the solution after extensive testing that I had from Western medicine, but a 10-day detox program completely resolved my issues, then I don't care what anybody says. And you shouldn't either. So that is to begin with. But then I started studying in the functional medicine matrix or paradigm. And this is more scientific than anything that your doctor would be thinking about if he's not a functionally trained in functional medicine. So the basis of how these systems of cleansing and detoxification work are very well understood and can be supported. So for example, somebody that wants to exercise and develop their muscles and be an athlete, would you tell them not to train and eat in a certain way and do weights and stuff because, oh, the body moves by itself? And it's amazing when you understand systems and organs, what you can do. Look at what bodybuilders and athletes do with the systems of muscles and tendons and bones and the nutrition that supports that and the way to exercise. So basically, they are putting their body into a state in which the body will need to do certain things to adapt and survive. And cleansing and detoxification is something that the body is always trying to do. But because it's busy doing other things, like eating and digesting or fighting inflammation in the intestines or anywhere else, or many other things, then the body doesn't get to do it optimally in an environment that requires actually for us to know how to intensify and support those systems of cleansing and detoxification.
That is very well said. Like you said, you can't argue with success. You've had great results, and you've witnessed thousands of people going through your clean program that have had very similar anecdotes. And so I think that, not everything is in the context of a placebo-controlled double-blind study. Sometimes we have to look a little bit broader. Dr. Junger, I'm curious, just based again on your vast experience, what do you think is the single most source of toxicity? A number of the things that you were just mentioning there would allude to food. Do you think that it's primarily food, or, what are the different toxins that we're exposed to? Why is everything so different now in the 21st century than in the early 20th century or the 19th century? Why have things gotten so bad?
Well, in general terms, the way I think about it is as follows. We have departed from the ways of nature. Our bodies, our minds, our spirits, if you will, are designed by nature and to live within nature. And when you see other animals living in nature as they were designed to, you see they don't get sick. They may have an accident, they may be eaten by another animal, but they don't get sick. They live, they're born, they grow, they run around, they reproduce, and then they die, but they don't have anxiety and depression and allergies and things like that. So we humans have departed from the ways of nature, and we're paying the price. And that departure from the ways of nature takes shape in many, many ways. In the way that we eat is a huge one. And even the fact that we are not eating foods anymore as nature provides them, we are eating food-like products or edible products that come in boxes, jars, tubes, cans, and all kinds of containers. And we add chemicals that make them smell better, taste better, look better, last longer. And that occupies 90% of the aisles of any supermarket around the world. The more industrialized the city, the more of these kind of products there are. And then the other products in the supermarket, which are in the periphery, like the meats and the eggs and the milk and the fish and the produce, that is not free of chemicals either. In the case of animals, we give them hormones, antibiotics to make them grow and to protect them from getting infected, because we give them foods that are, acidic and inflammatory for them. And then we give them all kinds of different things. Like, for example, I heard of salmon being given orange ink so that the meat looks better once it's processed. This is farmed salmon. And then we also give them the vegetables and fruits with fertilizers and insecticides and pesticides. So the list is endless, right? And these are the chemicals, the toxic chemicals, the molecules that we can see and measure. But there's also other toxins from our unnatural ways. And those are emotional toxins and mental toxins. You said you were interested in the connection between spirituality and the body, and this is where we have to start thinking. What is it that is more toxic these days? It's not only chemicals, it's also relationships and governments and situations.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And, as a scientist, I've often thought, which one propagates the other? Is it because we have a thought pattern that keeps us in a state of decline and lack of hope and fear that we make choices about our food? Or is it because we're eating certain processed, nutrient-poor foods that change our biochemistry that lead us to think certain ways?
Yeah,
Which one? Yeah.
That's an excellent question, and I write about it in my book. In Ayurvedic medicine, toxicity is not separated between tangible and non-tangible, between material and non-material. It's all under the same name, and the name is Amma. And Amma can be a toxic thought, a toxic emotion, a toxic food. And the concept is that toxicity resonates at a certain vibration, and it attracts the like by resonance. So if you are in a state of depression or anxiety, you will attract anxious and depressed thoughts, and you will be attracted to foods that will perpetuate that state. And this I see all the time. I put people on detox programs, and they tell me, wow, even my cravings are different, and my moods and my thoughts and my mind is clearer. And the reason why this is happening is because now they are in a different state and they attract different things.
Exactly. So you actually see that with people going through detox. So they start out with your program. Tell us a bit about your program, and maybe even what people have noticed about themselves as they go through this, even some other details, because it's fascinating to hear how people's thoughts and emotions can change just while changing their food. So tell us about the Clean program. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, what's interesting about the Clean program in its inception is that I learned about cleansing and detoxification at the We Care Spa, which is a juice fasting program. And then I was living in Palm Springs at that time, and I had a 2-bedroom apartment with a house with a little swimming pool, and I would have 6 months to a year waiting list for people to come and stay with me for a few days or a few weeks, and I would put them on different programs, and I would try this juice and that juice and colonics every day or every other day. I mean, all these variations. I was just experimenting. I didn't really know scientifically what I was doing. But then I moved to Los Angeles, and I wasn't seeing those miraculous results that I got when people came to my house and interrupted everything. They were in my house in Palm Springs. They were not doing anything. They were not taking the kids to school. They were not working. They were not stressed. So juice alone worked fantastic for them. Now, when I moved to Los Angeles and I started seeing patients at an office here in Los Angeles, I started realizing that most of my patients past day 3 of only juices, they didn't do very well. Some of them even got really sick. So I started trying to understand, and it was this point that took me into a quest where I ended up doing an AFMCP course, the Applying Functional Medicine for in Clinical Practice, which is the introductory course of functional medicine training. And it was then Jeffrey Bland was there, and I was talking, and I put my hand up and I said, well, I've had amazing results with people with juicing. And he said, well, but I bet you're not in the city. And the reason why is because you have to equalize the potency, the intensity of just liquids with a solid meal during the day, so that it was that meal will slow down the detox process and will be more adequate for people living a busy life in the city. And this changed my medical practice, because that's when the concept of liquid breakfast, solid meal for lunch, and liquid dinner came. And that's what made a huge difference in the results that I saw with my patients.
So are you saying that there's a different protocol depending on your lifestyle, where you can be? So if you're sequestered somewhere and you can be at a spa or a clinic or somebody's home and actually take the time to detox properly, that you might be able to fare better with something like a more stringent juicing regimen. But if you have to integrate detox into your everyday life, it might be more challenging, and you might need solid meals combined with some juice or some type of drink.
A different way of saying it is that there's a whole spectrum of detox intensity, and it's basically given by the fact that the less you eat and have to digest, the more the intense the detox processes turn. So water fasting would be the most intense way of doing it. But during that period, the body, when it's detoxifying, is releasing all kinds of things, and people get sicker. And part of the problem is that many of the molecules, the toxic molecules that have to be detoxified, are detoxified in the liver, and the liver needs certain things in order to do that, like certain amino acids and proteins and vitamins and things like that. So if you are putting somebody on a very intense mode, like water fasting, the liver is not well supported. That may have been great in the times of Jesus Christ, where there were not so many toxins around, and he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. But these days, for the regular person in America to go into such an intense detox is, I think, not good. Then so the more you eat, the less intense. So the one that follows in less intensity to water fasting would be juice fasting. Then less intense than that would be smoothies and salads. Less intense than that would be the elimination diet. But it's still intense enough that most of the people living in the city would get incredible results. So I learned how to equalize the intensity. And this is what I do on a personal level, on a one-on-one level. with people. Some days I have them eat a little bit more, or some days I have them just do liquids. I go playing with the intensities with it like an equalizer, and I get the best results.
Hmm. Well, and you're doing personalized nutrition. I mean, this is really the wave of the 21st century where we don't just have one generalized diet for everybody. I think all of these popular diets that are out there, they're just a one size fits all. And that's not how we all work with our individual biochemistry. So, the beauty of what you've done with detox as a nutritional protocol is you've personalized it along that spectrum, which is really beautiful. I think it's very well done. Some
Okay.
people might argue with you, though, a little bit about juicing because, yes, while you say that it helps to amplify the intensity, what we see with juicing is typically that is a lot of sugar. And there are other people that would contend that, you're feeding fungus or, it's not good for diabetics or you're changing the blood sugar, you're going to promote cravings. So, can you just talk just a little bit more about juicing and clear up any kind of misconceptions that listeners might have about that?
Yeah, when there's all kinds of juicing programs out there, and the ones that have too much sugar may pose a problem for the people that have yeast overgrowth or any other systemic mycosis or diabetes or a series of other problems. But I have had extensive experience putting people on juice cleanses, with incredible results. And we go into things like, and this, I don't know if you would agree with it, but I learned this from Gabriel Cousins, and I truly believe this is so, which is this: when you don't have enough protein from just juicing, the body will turn to its own protein to break it down and support the liver, and it will start with the diseased cells. So this is a process of autolysis that it's turned on when the intensity of detox is strong enough and the liver doesn't have the proteins it needs. The body will scavenge its own proteins to try to keep this process going, and that may lead to the cure, a word that I don't really like and use, but just to give the idea of incurable problems. And I've seen some of these things working, but these things cannot be just done by the average Joe in their apartment in New York City. Even if they hold themselves up and they don't leave, these things have to be guided by people that understand and then can bridge the some common problems that occur when you're doing those kind of things.
That's true because there can be people that aren't very healthy trying to do a detox and live their everyday lives, and that could be pretty overwhelming. So, I guess my next question for you is, should everybody detox, no matter what kind of chronic condition you have? If you're healthy, you're an athlete, or you've got fibromyalgia, you've got heart disease, you're a physician. So you see many people with chronic conditions. Is everybody well suited for detoxification?
Well, there's a general answer for that, and there's an individual answer for that. The general answer is this: one of the things that I say is, before I even make a diagnosis, before I even deeply go into, unless the problem is too serious, right? When patients come to me, the first thing is a detox, and I, of course, I tailor it to the person and the situation. Some people would benefit more from L-glutamine, other people would benefit more from a herbal antibacterial. It depends on, by talking to the person, you kind of are guided into what accompanying problems you may be dealing with, not only just turning the detox processes on. Uh, and 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 that is something that is important to do, right? But the general answer is yes. Everybody, if you live in a modern city these days, everybody could benefit from a detox program. And I'm only talking from adults. No, I'm not a pediatrician, so I have no experience with that. But if you live in the city today, and even outside of the city as well, people benefit from a detox program. And sick people that come to me, if not contraindicated, because there are cases in which detox is contraindicated, then I go ahead. It's like saying, go take a shower, come back, and let's see how you feel after the shower. And I'll tell you, a big percentage of the problems, all kinds of problems that people come to me with, are gone by the time the detox is finished.
Mm. Wow, that's profound. What about, one of the problems I think that goes under recognized, and I know that you as a physician and me as a nutrition professional, we can talk about this, and probably listeners would be curious about this topic as well. But I'd like to talk with you about bowel movements. Is that okay?
Sure.
That's one of the things, right? I have to ask the question. You have to ask the question, especially when people are going through a detox and even before a detox. And I don't think that we talk enough about our bowel habits. And it's so interesting to me when I ask people how often they have a bowel movement and they say, well, just normal, once a week, or normal, once every 3 days. What have you seen, and what happens to the gut? What happens to the bowel movements as we go through a detox process? And why is that even important to be talking about with detox?
Well, listen, imagine that your house is really dirty and crammed up with old stuff and boxes of pizza and dirt and whatever, and you decide one day, I'm going to do a profound cleaning, and you start cleaning, and you put all the dirt into bags and all the crap into bags, and you don't take the bags out of the house. You're going to have to pile them up in the living room, in your bedroom. Walking around the house would be difficult. The stench would be incredible, and it would attract roaches and mice. And this is the same thing that happens in your body, in your house, when you're doing a detox program, or even just living and not taking out the garbage. It's a problem. And what happens is, when people go into a detox program, things change. People that are regular may become constipated. People that are constipated may become may have diarrhea. People that are constipated may become even more constipated. And there's explanations for all of this that are very simple. For example, one of the most common explanations that I think of when I see patients going through these kind of changes in their bowel habits while they're detoxifying is that there's two basic reactions, like default reactions or simple reactions of the body against toxicity. One of them is retaining mucus to surround the toxic molecule and buffer its toxicity. And the other one is generating and retaining fat in order to dissolve these toxic chemicals, because 90% of the ones that we're exposed to are lipophilic. They only dissolve in fat. So the body, as a survival mechanism, has to generate fat and have these chemicals dissolved in it. Otherwise, it'll go to the fat that you cannot get rid of, like the brain, the mammary glands, the prostate, the testicles. And that's why there's cancers in many of these organs in a rampant epidemic these days. So the person, as it starts detoxifying, will start shedding this mucus. And then one of the main channels through which this mucus is eliminated is the intestines. So suddenly, if you make yourself little and you're in the intestines of somebody, you start seeing that the intestine is sweating off this mucus thing. And if the bowels are not, contracting and sending this forward, it kind of gets stuck to the wall. And sometimes I've seen, when I was doing intense detoxification on myself and on other people, that at one point it breaks off, even with the shape of your intestines, because it's like a hard kind of plastic thing called the mucoid plaque, right? So this may change the bowel habits of somebody that goes into detoxification, and one has to have those things into consideration. For example, when patients start a detox program and they're not pooping, I tell them, you can't go to sleep without pooping. You have to go, you make yourself poop and then go to sleep. And there's many ways to do that. The old-fashioned way with castor oil, which worked for many of my patients, all the way to magnesium salts or magnesium supplements, and many herbal laxatives that I use, like senna and things like that. and that is how important I think bowel movements are.
Hmm. Well, what about the reverse? What about enemas? I know in some detoxification practices they refer to that approach. Do you think that that's healthy?
Everything that you do can be healthy or not depending on the context and under whose hands you're doing it, right?
Hmm.
So enemas and colonics can become like the bulimic anorexic who vomits after they feel bloated a little bit. I know a lot of people that are a little bit bloated. Oh, I'm gonna go get a colonic, and not doing anything else different.
Hmm.
I find that colonics are and enemas are great in many circumstances. One of which is for the person that is within a program of cleansing and detoxification, because then you get rid of all this mucoid plaque as it's forming, and that mucoid plaque would prevent not only the elimination of other toxins that are coming behind, but also the absorption of good nutrients, and sometimes even the overgrowth of microorganisms that shouldn't be there.
So there's a lot that's happening in the gut that really fuels whether or not we have toxins in our body and whether or not we're getting them out. It sounds like that's the first place to start.
Yes.
Yeah. And an area of great importance, and which is why you've written a book on clean gut. So, what I would like for you to do, if you can, because you've given us so many pearls of wisdom, is to what would be your takeaways? So, for all the listeners, to really have your knowledge, distilling them into these three pearls, what is most important for people to recognize as it relates to toxic burden and the process of detox and preventing retox?
Yeah, well, there's a few different aspects of things that people should be aware and should be doing, right? One of them is avoiding or eliminating as much of the sources of toxic chemicals as they can with the household products, by filtering the water in your house, by not using phthalate leaching plastic bottles for or containers for your food and your water, by reviewing your cosmetics and making sure there's no toxic chemicals that you're applying on your skin, which would end up in your bloodstream. One should be able to eat what one puts on one's skin. So avoiding all these chemicals, especially in the foods that you eat, is important. The other aspect of it is making sure that your cleansing and detoxification systems are running. It is not a good idea to think of detox programs as, you go get dirty and then you come and do a detox program, and then you go get dirty and then you come and you do a detox program, because that's like yo-yo dieting in a way. Um, the hope is that a detox program will show you that nothing tastes as good as feeling good feels, and even beyond that, and then people would change their even their cravings for the long term, right? So those two aspects, the removing of the toxins from your life, and not only toxic chemicals, I'm talking about toxic relationships, toxic jobs, toxic whatever, and even toxic emotions and thoughts, by meditating and doing sports and things like and enjoying and sleeping, and the other aspect of detoxification programs and supplements to help the body get rid of this. But the way of looking at these two together in a wider angle is, we need to return to the ways of nature, and if we don't, we need to mimic them the most possible. For example, in your house, there shouldn't be any chemicals that you wouldn't find in a forest where you would be living if you were not civilized or modern or whatever. You should be exposed to the sun like you would be if you were living like the rest of the animals on the planet. And you should sleep in the dark. And so when you start doing things in a more natural way, you are, without even knowing about cleansing and detoxification, putting your cleansing and detoxification organs and systems to good use and being supported.
That I think all of those things that you mentioned are definitely in sync with what all the other speakers that are saying as part of the Detox Summit. So we're starting to converge on some areas of truth here with respect to returning to this nature, the natural settings that we come from. And one of the things that you brought up, Dr. Younger, that I also want to leave the audience with is this idea of stress. That, I believe you believe that stress is a toxin. And when we're stressed, it's hard to make these changes. So is that one place to start, is to look at our stress level too? Is that something that you would regard as part of the process?
Absolutely, and that's not only part of the process of a healthy body and a healthy mind, but it's part of your spiritual process. I think it's part of what we came here for at this time and age, to learn how to be at peace in the midst of whatever it is that we're going through, right? And when you start practicing things like meditation that really put you more in the present, you start realizing how much better your life becomes, right? So definitely.
Wonderful. Well, you've set such a great example for us as a physician, healer, and teacher, writer. You've really brought together so many of these great concepts in your book, Clean and also now Clean Gut. And we look forward to your next book, which I'm sure you'll be telling us more about cleansing of other organs as well. So thank you, Dr. Younger, for being part of the Detox Summit and really helping people to understand the issue of toxicity, but not to be fearful and to really know that there's hope in detoxification. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. I'll tell you what I can't wait for is to listen to the other speakers in your summit.
Yes, it'll be an extravaganza. It'll be great to have us all together for this detox party of, really allowing the information and inspiration to unfold. So thank you so much.
Yeah, good work. Keep it up.